So in Gainesville, the headlines not great because you are the center of one of the biggest stories of this late recruiting cycle. You know, these last weeks and these last months, if you're talking about recruiting to somebody who maybe only watches a little bit of college football or is just kind of around the college sports atmosphere, you're talking about Jaden Rashada. The reports of a $13 million NIL deal that ended up not falling through. He's released from his national letter of intent. And then here, one of the big stories of the day is Jaden Rashada commits to Arizona State. Billy Napier, however, has been working on a lot of prospects in a signing class that does not include Jaden Rashada, but still is also very important for the Gators moving forward, coming off somewhat of a disappointing year one, certainly a very disappointing finish to year one with that bowl performance against Oregon State. What's good about the Gators class, and what are you encouraged by? Because clearly, when you're number 12, there are very good pieces here that are going to be very important to Billy Napier and the future of the program.
Exactly. So 12th in the country, 5th in the SEC, right? We just saw South Carolina have a really strong day as well, so they're kind of nipping at their heels there. But when you add in Oklahoma and Texas, now all of a sudden you're 7th in the SEC, and that's not where Florida wants to be. Florida wants to be at the peak of Spurrier recruiting, right? Urban Meyer, when he was at his best recruiting. Heck, Ron Zook, who recruited really well, didn't win with those players, but certainly set up Urban Meyer's national title runs with the recruiting that he did. They did have the embarrassment of the Rashada situation, which they flubbed. And you had Cormani McClain's recruitment, if we can go back a couple months, who he went to Miami. And then I know he's going to Colorado now, but at the time, Florida was kind of expecting that to be a bit of a coronation, and instead he went to the Hurricanes at the time. And it overshadows, I think, some of the good work that Florida is doing in this class, right? They really needed some help on the defensive line. Kelby Collins is a difference maker, I think. I liked him a lot during All-Star season. He has the length. He has the quickness to be a really special player for them. I think Cameron James is another really nice SEC body that the Gators brought in. And my favorite guy in their class, maybe my favorite player in the entire recruiting cycle this year, is Jakeem Jackson. He's a guy that Ivanson and I saw during a 7-on-7, like way back during COVID, and he was a receiver who was just starting to learn how to play corner, and we were like, ooh, this guy might be the next Xavier Rhodes out of the state of Florida, who, you know, if you guys followed recruiting or high school ball, Xavier Rhodes, receiver at Miami Norland, switched to corner in college and is now like a 10 or 12-year pro in the league. So I like what they're doing from a defensive standpoint as well. Also, Eugene Wilson is a really, really explosive receiver for the Gators. I think he's a guy that's going to get on the field pretty early. At quarterback for UF, here's the key. They have DJ Lagway committed, their 5-star 2024 kid. They just have to win. I think it's fair to question, like, is Lagway going to stay committed to them if they put up another losing record? They finished, 6-7 this year? But if they have a nice year on the field, which is possible, you got to look at the schedule. They do open at Utah, which could be tough. Then we might just totally forget about Jaden Rashada in Florida because Lagway can play. And if they have a good year on the field, I would guess that he would stay committed. If they don't show improvements on the field and then Lagway doesn't stay committed, then I think that's when you might run into some problems. So for Florida, it's a nice base class. I think it could set them up to have an even better class next year if they have a good year on the field and solve their quarterback problems. But let's be fair here. They fired Dan Mullen in Gainesville for having recruiting classes that rank 9th and 12th. And this one ranks 12th. The expectation for Florida, which has won multiple national championships in both our lifetimes, is to be up in that top 5, not in the top 15. So I understand why they're angry in Gainesville.
What can close that gap? Is it as simple as getting everybody in line off the field? Is it as simple as maybe some staff changes or, a key hire here or there? Because, Billy Napier had been a head coach for a while. I mean, heck, he knows big time college football. He was at Alabama, but he's here at Florida and things do not seem to all quite be in line. One of the big compliments after the hire was made was that he was able to use that blueprint that he had from Alabama and from some of the other Power 5 stops that he'd had to be able to say, no, this is what we need. We need to staff up in this area. We need to staff up in this area. We need an investment in this football program that wasn't necessarily there. And you would think that that would lead to the recruiting success and closing the gap. So I guess my question is, what's stopping Florida from being able to make that jump right now?
It's a great question. You use the word get in line. I'm going to use the A word, alignment, right? Is Florida as aligned as they need to be? Every time we see one of these Saban assistants get hired away, they all basically preach the same playbook, whether it's Mario at Miami or Jimbo in Tallahassee or College Station or Pruitt at Tennessee or Muschamp the first time in Gainesville. They all kind of preach the same thing, but it doesn't always work out. A lot of those dudes actually end up failing. So I think alignment within the program is key. Obviously, like not having a Rashada situation would be a real advantage for Florida going forward if they could avoid that. But I do think it's a bit of a wasted opportunity because you did have this nice sort of building block of a class that if you had a couple extra special pieces on it, I think we'd be speaking much more highly about. But you got to have a nicer year on the field this year. I don't know what Florida's recruiting looks like if they were to go 6-6 or 7-5 or 5-7 following up a 6-7 campaign. That's where I think it maybe starts to get shaky.